Who doesn't know the 911? It's an icon, a reference when explaining the love of everything cars for us car guys. And for us car guys, the 911 is the pinnacle of driving pleasure, embodies everything we want in the purest of driving experience, and through its capabilities entangles an incredible history. And in this video, I want to walk through the history and explain what it means to be the hero from Stuttgart that is the 911, how each generation has evolved through time as well as what it meant when each generation arrived. So let's go back to the start, before the tags of the 996 and the 991, we have the 911. Simple. In 1963, the 911, at the time called the 901, was unveiled at the Frankfurt Motor Show. It wasn't Porsche's first experience in the rear-engine automobiles, as it replaced the 356, which shared the rear-engine, rear-wheel drive layout. However, with 2 extra cylinders and a bigger displacement, this represented the beginning of the sports car legend today. Here we have the 2.7 Carrera RS version of the original 911, which came closer to the end of production. Having 210 horsepower and 188 foot-pounds of torque at 2000 RPM, the numbers aren't crazy for today's standards, however it weighed under 1000 kgs, coming in at 975, which makes this car an absolute laugh to drive, as that's coupled with thin tyres which weren't uncommon for the time. However, although not wearing a sim, this car is commonly found for £750,000, which would definitely make some drivers hesitant to push it. Visually, this version is my favourite of the original 911. The iconic yet subtle livery, and most importantly, the first production car to have a wing with its famous ducktail. In 1973, the 911 had its first refresh with the G series. Most updates brought it up to standard with the new safety regulations and a light redesign of the car. It ran from 1973 to 1989, the longest run of any 911 generation. Here we have the 911 Turbo, the first generation to have a turbo in its lineup. This example is the 3.3 litre variant with the 5-speed manual transmission and 330 horsepower. With this older technology, this is a driving experience you dare get distracted from. However, the new decade coming along, Porsche unveiled a new 911. The next in the lineup came along with a new naming system, the 964. After the previous generation having such a long stint, this car had 85% new parts, including versions with a four-wheel drive option, not seen before in a 911. This example is the Carrera RS, a lightweight rear-wheel drive only version with the 3.6 litre engine making 260 horsepower. With the body kit supplied for this version with that gorgeous wing, it is definitely a contender for the best 911 visually and as a driving experience. The 911 was beginning to set its mark on the automotive industry. With 30 years of history and only a few years after the 964, the 911 received another refresh. The 993 was launched in 1993. As well as the first with the Nulumiumn chassis, it also had a substantial redesign. The body lines were smoother with its newly integrated bumpers and lesser pronounced headlights, coming into the 90s with a new face. Porsche liked to express again how little the car shared with its predecessor with 80% new parts, and with the suspension redesign it is said to remove the lift-off oversteer the others suffered, creating another incredible and unique driving experience the 911 had always offered. This example is the 993 Turbo. The first ever twin turbocharged engine, so the 3.6 litre made 402 horsepower. The newly designed bumpers and 6cm thicker rear arches as well as four-wheel drive means that this car was something else. However, when installing this mod to Assetto Corsa, also got a version, roof-tuned engine to 490 horsepower, a set of HREs and the best driving experience in Assetto Corsa. The 993 is an icon for one big reason. To find out why, we have to look to 1997. The 996 was the first 911 to have a water-cooled engine. A completely new car was introduced onto the 911 history, sharing nothing with its predecessor and being the beginning of the GT series. The new shape meant the rebadged Beetle flew smoother and quicker through the air, and the engine assured better MPG and more reliability. But onto this, I'm unsure if Porsche knew the impact that the GT3 would have on our automotive future. The car was reminiscent of their GT3 race cars of the time, bringing the best of the best that track experience and luxury and capability of the road cars together in one package, tied neatly together with controversial and debatably ugly headlights. Launched in 2004 and back with better headlights, the 997 was the best of all 911's previous wrapped into one. This was helped by 24 different model variants, meaning whatever you wanted from your 911, there was a version of it. From the standard Carrera making 325 horsepower to the GT2 RS making an incredible 620. This is the GT3 RS 4.0, a variant that had a naturally aspirated 4-litre flat 6 making 500 horsepower. This was the largest displacement engine put in the 911. As well as shared parts from the RSR and the GT2 RS, there are only 600 of these made, so similarly to any limited Porsche, these are not cheap. However, unlike other limited Porsches, this one may be worth it. And this is where the realisation happened. Our Caymans became 4-cylinder turbocharged and our hot hatches became automatic. The 991 was the first generation to have the GT3 and the GT3 RS be automatic transmission only. The 991, introduced in 2011, was a huge leap in technological advancements. However, as people say similarly with McLaren, you run the risk of losing driving feel and involvement when technology is taking the wheel. And so, The 911R was an incredibly bright glimmer of light in the midst of manufacturer lap time battles. Everything the 997 offered for a modern example of a classic driving experience felt lost in the new generation of 911. However, Porsche showed us that their passion for creating a driver's experience was still there with the 911R, removing the sound deadening, the option of a radio, not a standard feature, manual only, houndstooth seats, no wing, all coupled with the generation's GT3 RS 4-litre naturally aspirated flat 6 with 500 horsepower. This created the best driver's car on the market. And so the trend was set. We all knew Porsche weren't about to create a manual transmission for this engine for it not to be used again. The 991.2 GT3 came with the option of a manual transmission as well as having a 4-litre engine. As every manufacturer complied with new regulations, it was refreshing to see Porsche work away to create a driver's car. The 911R was another pinpoint in history where Porsche had created one of, if not the, best cars on sale. And there had always been 7 wonders of the world. That was until late 2018, when Porsche announced the 8th generation of the 911. The 992 is the most recent refresh to the 911, now with 60 years of history redefining the sports car. The 992 Carrera S and 4S were launched first, PDK only, with a twin-turbo 3-litre making 444 horsepower. To say Porsche has executed the new rules and regulations of the road with huge success wouldn't be giving them justice. The 992 is the best example of a road car that continues to give the same emotion and emits the same passion as when they first created the 911. The same feeling of luxury and sports car without compromise, the same feeling of usability and, recently with options of a manual transmission, pure driving experience. The 992 is riddled with throwbacks to the original 911s of the 70s and 80s, from the rear light bar stretching the whole of the rear end unbroken, to the typefaces on the analog tachometer. This is the first 911 I'm experiencing a release since I found my love for cars, and for Porsche in particular. The first time I'm experiencing the hype, the excitement, the speculation of what's to come pre-announcement. And then the voices of negativity that speak loudest at first, the looks, the engine, the turbos, you hear it all. And when the red mist begins to disappear, you see the beauty, the capabilities, the endless raving reviews and positive posts online. The more you see it, the more you understand it. And then you experience it. And it's like nothing else. The 911 is a mark in history that will never be forgotten. For us car folk, it's the pinnacle of the sports car, the beauty of automotive history that can trickle down through the generations and will constantly remind us what it means to drive. To have the ultimate driving experience machine at our fingertips. To enjoy a road like a roller coaster under our control. The 911 is the perfect combination of years of technological advancements and driving experience. A racing heritage too large to touch on in this video, in a road car. The 911 is an automotive marvel. These are the 8 wonders of the world.